Get ready to witness the most jaw-dropping political showdown in congressional history. When Hillary Clinton, the polished former Secretary of State, thought she could outsmart a simple country lawyer from Louisiana, she walked straight into a constitutional ambush that would leave her legacy in tatters. Smash that like button, because in just 10 minutes, you'll see one question unravel a decades-long career. This Louisiana lawyer didn't just challenge Clinton, he dismantled her with facts, documents, and a briefcase full of undeniable truth. Picture this: the woman who navigated global diplomacy and Washington's elite circles, confident she'd crush a Southern senator, meets a man who's read every classified file she thought was buried. Clinton thought she was facing a backwoods nobody. Instead, she got a constitutional scholar with a razor-sharp mind and a slow drawl that cut deeper than any speech she'd ever given. Hit subscribe, because what happens next will restore your faith in accountability and justice. The Senate hearing room was electric C-SPAN cameras rolling live, capturing every moment for the nation to see. This was supposed to be Hillary Clinton's moment to shine a chance to flex her political prowess against some small-town senator from Louisiana. The media had already written the headlines. CNN predicted Clinton schools Southern senator, while social media buzzed with #ClintonCrushes trending. Vegas odds makers had Clinton favored 3-1, expecting an easy victory. They had no idea what was coming. Senator John Kennedy shuffled into the room, looking like he'd wandered in from a fishing trip down in the bayou. His suit was slightly rumpled, his old leather briefcase scuffed, and his slow Louisiana drawl made the Washington elite smirk. They saw a country bumpkin out of his depth in the marble halls of power. Hillary Clinton, by contrast, entered like a Hollywood star stepping onto a red carpet. Her tailored suit was impeccable. Her posture exuded confidence, and her reputation as a political titan preceded her. She'd outmaneuvered opponents on the world stage for decades. Surely this would be a walk in the park. The room buzzed with anticipation as Clinton took her seat, her legal team whispering assurances, her eyes scanning the chamber with the cool certainty of someone who'd never lost a debate. That's when she made her first fatal mistake. Senator Kennedy Clinton began, her voice dripping with the kind of condescension that made her supporters cheer and her critics cringe. Perhaps you should stick to fishing in the bayou and leave matters of national security to those who actually understand them. The room gasped. Even by Washington's cutthroat standards, it was a brutal jab, the kind that could end a lesser politician's confidence in seconds. The gallery stirred, reporters scribbled furiously, and social media lit up with reactions. But Kennedy? He just smiled, that slow, disarming grin that seemed to say, "Oh, darling, you just stepped in it." His response was so soft, so gentle, it was almost a whisper, yet it carried the weight of a freight train. "Well, golly, Mrs. Clinton," he drawled, adjusting his glasses and reaching for his battered briefcase. "You're probably right. I'm just a simple country lawyer. Went to some little school. Oh, what was it called? That's right, Harvard Law School." The room froze. The first crack appeared in Clinton's polished facade, her confident smirk faltering just enough for the cameras to catch. "And you're right. I don't know much about national security." Kennedy continued, his voice still soft, but now laced with steel. "Just clerked for the Supreme Court. But I reckon that don't count for much around here." The chamber shifted, the air thick with realization. This wasn't the bumbling hick the media had painted. This was a man who'd been underestimated, and he was about to make Clinton pay for it. "My daddy taught me something," Kennedy said, popping open his briefcase with a click that echoed like a gavel in the silent room. "When someone talks real fancy, you better check their homework, 'cause the loudest folks usually got the most to hide." He pulled out a thick folder, its cover stamped with the unmistakable seals of the State Department and the FBI. The chamber's monitors flickered to life, displaying the first of many documents that would unravel Clinton's carefully crafted image. "So, Mrs. Clinton, I checked your homework. And boy, did I find some interesting things. Comment below." If you see where this is going, the country lawyer just set a trap, and Clinton walked right into it. Kennedy's first folder was a bombshell marked with classifications that made even the seasoned security personnel in the room shift nervously. When he opened it, the documents inside carried the weight of national security itself. Mrs. Clinton Kennedy began his drawl, giving way to a more serious tone while still keeping that deceptive Southern charm. "You were Secretary of State from 2009 to 2013, weren't you? That's a mighty important job handling America's most sensitive secrets, making sure our national security stays safe." Clinton nodded, her expression still composed, but her eyes narrowing slightly. "Yes, Senator Kennedy," she replied, her voice measured. "I took that responsibility very seriously. My work at the State Department was dedicated to protecting American interests and ensuring our security." "Oh, I'm sure you did," Kennedy said, his tone gentle, but his eyes sharp as he laid out the first document with the precision of a surgeon. "That's why I got a little curious about something. See, I'm just a simple man, but I got a habit of asking questions when things don't add up." He gestured to the monitors where a timeline appeared, meticulously detailing a series of events that would make the room gasp. "Let's start with your time as Secretary of State. You used a private email server for official government business, didn't you? Not just for personal stuff, but for classified communications, some of the most sensitive information our country has." The timeline on the screen was damning, showing dates and times of emails sent from Clinton's private server, many marked with classification levels that should never have left a secure government system. "Now, I ain't no tech expert," Kennedy continued, "but I know that classified information is supposed to stay on secure servers, not on some basement computer that could be hacked by anyone with a keyboard and a grudge." The room stirred as the implications sank in. Clinton's legal team leaned forward, whispering frantically, but she remained composed, though her hands tightened on the table. "Let me show you something real interesting," Kennedy said, pulling out a stack of declassified FBI reports. "This here is a report from the FBI's investigation into your email server. They found over 100 emails containing classified information, some marked top secret, sent or received through your private server. That's the kind of stuff that could get folks killed if it fell into the wrong hands." The monitors displayed a redacted email, its contents partially blacked out, but still revealing enough to show sensitive intelligence about foreign operations. One of these emails, Kennedy continued, discussed an ongoing counterterrorism operation in a hostile country. It was sent from your private server to an unsecured recipient. Now, I may be just a country lawyer, but that seems like what we call a national security risk. Clinton tried to interject, her voice calm but firm. "Senator, as I've explained before, those emails were not marked classified at the time and my server was secure. I followed all applicable protocols." Kennedy held up a hand, his smile never wavering, but his eyes locking onto hers. "Oh, I hear you, Mrs. Clinton. But let's check the homework on that." He produced another document, this one a State Department memo from Clinton's own tenure. This memo, signed by your office, outlines the protocols for handling classified information. It says clear as day that all sensitive communications must go through secure government channels, no exceptions. Yet you sent and received thousands of emails through a private server that wasn't even close to meeting those standards. The memo appeared on the monitors, highlighted passages showing the strict rules Clinton had personally approved. Now, either you didn't read your own department's rules, Or you decided they didn't apply to you, Kennedy said, his voice carrying a hint of righteous indignation. Which is it, Mrs. Clinton, ignorance or arrogance? The question hung in the air, sharp and unyielding. The gallery murmured, and reporters typed furiously, sensing a story that would dominate headlines for weeks. Clinton's face remained composed, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of unease as Kennedy pressed forward. Let's look at the consequences, Kennedy said, pulling out another set of documents, these marked with the seals of the Department of Defense. Because this ain't just about emails sitting on a server. This is about what happened when those emails got out. The monitors displayed a classified report detailing a compromised intelligence operation. This report shows that a foreign intelligence service, let's just say, they ain't our friends, gained access to information that could only have come from your server. That operation, it had to be shut down. 2 of our assets had to be pulled out of a hostile country in the dead of night. One of them barely made it out alive. The room fell silent, the weight of Kennedy's words sinking in. This wasn't just a procedural error. It was a mistake that had put lives at risk. Now, I'm just a simple man, Kennedy continued. But when the Secretary of State uses an unsecured server for classified information, and that information ends up in the hands of our enemies, that ain't just a mistake. That's a betrayal of the trust the American people placed in you. Kennedy began pacing his movements deliberate, his voice gaining strength as he built his case. But it gets worse, Mrs. Clinton. See, I found a pattern. This wasn't a one-time slip-up. My staff went through the FBI's findings, and we counted 22 separate instances where classified information from your server was accessed by unauthorized parties. 22 times our national security was compromised because you thought the rules didn't apply to you. He displayed a chart on the monitors, a stark visual of the 22 incidents, each tied to specific emails and their consequences. Each one of these could have been avoided if you'd followed the protocols you yourself approved. Each one put American lives at risk. And each one raises a question: why did you do it? Why risk our security for the convenience of a private server? Clinton's legal team scrambled passing notes, but she remained silent, her expression a mask of control that was starting to crack. Now I know what you're gonna say, Kennedy said, anticipating her defense. You've said before that none of those emails were marked classified at the time. But let's be real clear about something. As Secretary of State, you were trained to recognize classified information, marked or not. You knew what was sensitive. You knew what could hurt this country if it got out, and you still chose to send it through an unsecured server. He pulled out another document, this one a training certificate from the State Department. This is your signature, Mrs. Clinton, on a form confirming you completed classified information training. It says you understood your responsibility to protect sensitive information no matter how it was marked. So when you say those emails weren't marked classified, are you saying you didn't know what classified meant? Or are you saying you just didn't care? The question was a dagger cutting through Clinton's carefully crafted defenses. The chamber was deathly quiet, every eye on her as she struggled to formulate a response. Clinton finally spoke, her voice steady but strained. Senator, I've addressed this issue multiple times. The FBI concluded there was no evidence of intentional misconduct, and I took steps to ensure my communications were secure. Kennedy didn't miss a beat, his drawl sharpening into prosecutorial precision. No intentional misconduct. That's a mighty interesting choice of words, Mrs. Clinton. Because the FBI also said your server was so insecure it could have been hacked by a teenager with a laptop. And those 22 incidents, they weren't accidents, they were the result of choices you made. He produced a final document, a cybersecurity report from the State Department's own inspectors. This report says your server was vulnerable to attacks from day one. It wasn't encrypted to government standards. It wasn't monitored by security professionals. It was a sit and duck, and you knew it. The report appeared on the monitors, its findings highlighted in red, grossly inadequate security measures. The phrase burned into the minds of everyone watching. Kennedy stopped pacing and faced Clinton directly, his voice dropping to a tone of moral authority. Mrs. Clinton, you took an oath to protect this country's secrets. You swore to uphold the laws that keep us safe. But instead, you put our most sensitive information at risk because it was more convenient for you. You put American lives in danger to avoid a little paperwork. He held up his pocket Constitution worn from years of use and opened it to Article 2. The Constitution gives the executive branch the power to protect this nation, but it also demands responsibility. You didn't just fail in that responsibility, you ignored it entirely. The room was silent, the weight of his words settling over the chamber like a storm cloud. Clinton's team whispered furiously, but she sat motionless, her eyes fixed on the table, unable to meet Kennedy's gaze. "But we're just getting started," Kennedy said, reaching for another folder, this one even thicker than the first. "Because mishandling classified information was just your warm-up act. What you did with your finances makes this look like a parking ticket. Smash that like button if you think Clinton's about to face the music. Comment national security if you believe risking American lives for convenience is unforgivable. The next chapter will show you how deep this rabbit hole goes." Kennedy's first blow had landed, and the chamber knew they were witnessing the beginning of a reckoning. Clinton's polished image was cracking, and the country lawyer from Louisiana was just warming up. The trap was set, and there was no way out. Buckle up, because Senator John Kennedy's constitutional takedown of Hillary Clinton is about to hit a whole new level. After exposing her reckless mishandling of classified information, the Louisiana lawyer, with the folksy drawl and a mind like a steel trap, is diving into the murky waters of Clinton's financial dealings, a swamp of money and influence that could make even the slickest Washington insider wince. Smash that like button because in the next 8 minutes, you'll see Kennedy unravel a web of cash favors and betrayal that screams corruption louder than a bayou thunderstorm. This isn't just about a few bucks changing hands. It's about a former Secretary of State turning public service into a personal piggy bank, and Kennedy's got the receipts to prove it. Clinton thought she could outsmart a country lawyer, but she's about to learn that his battered briefcase holds more truth than her polished speeches ever could. Hit subscribe because what's coming next will make you rethink everything about political integrity. The Senate hearing room was still buzzing from Kennedy's first round of revelations, the air crackling with tension. Hillary Clinton sat poised, her legal team whispering furiously, but the confidence she'd walked in with was starting to crack like thin ice. The media, expecting a Clinton victory lap, were scrambling to rewrite their headlines as social media lit up with #KennedyStrikes trending worldwide. They'd underestimated the man in the rumpled suit, and he was ready to make them pay for it again. Senator John Kennedy leaned forward, his old leather briefcase open like a vault of hard truths. His Louisiana drawl, slow and easy, filled the chamber with a deceptive calm that belied the storm he was about to unleash. "Mrs. Clinton," he began, his voice carrying that Southern charm that made the Washington elite smirk. "You've served this country in some mighty big roles, Senator, Secretary of State, First Lady. That's a lot of responsibility. But I got to wondering about something. With all that public service, how'd you manage to keep track of all the money flowing your way?" The room stirred, sensing a shift. Clinton's eyes narrowed, her posture stiffening as Kennedy reached into his briefcase and pulled out a folder stamped with the seals of the Federal Election Commission. "See, I'm just a simple country lawyer," he drawled, "but my daddy taught me that when money and power start dancing together, you better check the books." The chamber's monitors flickered to life, displaying a spreadsheet that would make any honest accountant's jaw drop. "So I took a look at your financial homework, Mrs. Clinton, and boy did I find a treasure trove. Comment below if you see what's coming. The country lawyer's about to drop a financial bombshell, and Clinton's in the hot seat." The folder Kennedy held was packed with campaign finance records and disclosures that told a story of influence peddling so blatant it could have been ripped from a political thriller. "Let's start with your time as Secretary of State," Kennedy said, his voice steady, but his eyes locked on Clinton like a hawk. "From 2009 to 2013, your family's foundation, the Clinton Foundation, raked in millions from some very interesting folks. I'm talking foreign governments, big corporations, and people with a lot to gain from U.S. policy." The monitors showed a chart, its bars rising like skyscrapers, detailing donations to the foundation. "Now, I ain't saying it's wrong to take donations," Kennedy continued, "but when those donations come from folks you're dealing with as Secretary of State, it starts looking less like charity and more like a transaction." The chart highlighted key donors: $8 million from a foreign government, $4 million from a global corporation, $1.5 million from a businessman tied to State Department deals. The numbers hit the room like a thunderclap. "Let's zero in on one case," Kennedy said, pulling out a document with the precision of a prosecutor. "This here shows a $10 million donation to the Clinton Foundation from a foreign government. Call it Country Y, made in 2010, right in the middle of your term." The monitors displayed a timeline linking the donation to a major diplomatic decision. Just 6 weeks after that, money landed. Country Y got a shiny new trade deal with the U.S., one your department helped push through. Now I'm just a simple man, but that smells an awful lot like pay to play. Clinton shifted her legal team, scribbling notes, but Kennedy pressed on. "And it ain't just one donation," he said, flipping to another page. "We found 14 instances where big donations to your foundation lined up with favorable policy moves from your State Department. 14 times, Mrs. Clinton. That's not a coincidence. That's a pattern." The timeline expanded, showing a web of donations and decisions that left the room stunned. Clinton tried to counter, her voice calm but tinged with strain. "Senator, the Clinton Foundation is a transparent charitable organization doing vital global work. Those donations were reported, and there's no evidence of improper influence." Kennedy's smile was almost gentle as he reached for another document. "Transparent, you say? Let's check that." He held up a report from the State Department's Ethics Office. "This shows your foundation failed to disclose over 900 foreign donations while you were Secretary of State. That's 900 contributions that should have been reported, but somehow got lost in the shuffle." The monitors showed a list, a scrolling parade of unreported donations that made the gallery gasp. Now, either you didn't know about these donations, which means you weren't minding your own foundation, or you knew and chose to hide them. Which is it, Mrs. Clinton? The question was a trap, and the chamber felt it. Clinton's silence was louder than any defense. "But let's talk about your personal finances," Kennedy said, his drawl sharpening. "Because this ain't just about the foundation." He pulled out financial disclosures, their pages marked with red highlights. "Between 2009 and 2013, you and your husband earned $25 million in speaking fees, mostly from companies and foreign entities with business before your State Department." The monitors showed a breakdown: $400,000 for a speech to a bank, $600,000 to a tech firm, $800,000 to a foreign investor. Now, I ain't been paid that much to talk, Kennedy quipped, earning a chuckle. But I reckon you were saying something worth hearing. The laughter faded as he displayed a contract. This speech was for a company that got a State Department contract 3 weeks later. Funny how that works, ain't it? The room was silent, the implication clear. Kennedy began pacing, his voice building with moral weight. But it gets better. Your daughter's consulting firm pulled in $1.8 million from companies tied to your foundation's donors. Your brother's business got $1 million in deals linked to State Department approvals. The monitors showed a flowchart tracing money from donors to the Clintons' family. This ain't public service, Kennedy said, his voice cutting. This is a family business with you at the helm, moving money like a monopoly game. Clinton objected, her voice firm. Senator, those earnings were legal and disclosed. My family's work is separate from my duties. Kennedy's eyes gleamed. Legal, maybe. But when your family's getting rich off your position, that's not service, it's profit. He produced letters from constituents, their words raw. John Carter from Missouri writes, I trusted you to serve us, not your bank account. These are the folks you forgot, Mrs. Clinton. The letters hit the monitors, their simplicity devastating. But we ain't done, Kennedy said, reaching for another folder, because selling influence was just your warm-up. What you did to the free press is going to make this look like small change. Smash that like button if you think Clinton's finances need a hard look. Comment pay to play if you believe public service shouldn't mean personal profit. The next chapter will show how far she went to control the narrative. Kennedy's second strike had landed, and Clinton's polished image was crumbling fast. Brace yourselves, because Senator John Kennedy's constitutional crusade against Hillary Clinton is about to take a devastating turn. Having exposed her reckless handling of classified information and her murky financial dealings, the Louisiana lawyer, with the slow drawl and a mind sharper than a bayou gator, is now zeroing in on a betrayal that strikes at the heart of American democracy, Clinton's assault on free speech. Smash that like button, because in the next 8 minutes, you'll witness Kennedy unravel a chilling campaign to silence voices and control the narrative backed by documents that could make the First Amendment weep. This isn't just about a politician pulling strings. It's about a former Secretary of State weaponizing her influence to stifle the free press and the American people's right to know. Clinton thought she could outmaneuver a country lawyer. But Kennedy's battered briefcase is loaded with truths that hit harder than any speech she's ever given. Hit subscribe, because what's coming next will make you rethink everything about the freedom you hold dear. The Senate hearing room was still reeling from Kennedy's last round, the air thick with tension, as reporters scrambled and social media erupted with #Kennedy. Exposes trending worldwide. Hillary Clinton sat rigid, her legal team whispering frantically, her once unshakable confidence, now a fragile mask. The media, expecting her to dominate, were now grappling with a narrative they couldn't spin. They'd underestimated the man in the rumpled suit, and he was about to make them regret it again. Senator John Kennedy leaned back, his old leather briefcase open like a vault of constitutional justice. His Louisiana drawl, slow and deliberate, filled the chamber with a calm that belied the storm he was about to unleash. Mrs. Clinton, he began, his voice carrying that folksy charm that made the Washington elite smirk. You've held some mighty powerful positions. First Lady, Senator, Secretary of State. Folks trusted you to uphold the Constitution, especially the parts that protect our freedoms. The room stirred, sensing a shift. Clinton's eyes narrowed, her posture stiff, as Kennedy reached into his briefcase and pulled out a folder stamped with the seals of major tech companies and congressional oversight committees. "See, I'm just a simple country lawyer," he drawled. "But my daddy taught me that when someone starts messin' with free speech, you better check their motives." The chamber's monitors flickered to life, displaying a timeline that would make any patriot's blood boil. "So I took a look at how you handled the free press, Mrs. Clinton. And boy, did I find a hornet's nest. Comment below if you see where this is headed. The country lawyer's about to drop a First Amendment bombshell, and Clinton's in the line of fire." The folder Kennedy held was packed with emails, internal memos, and subpoenaed communications that painted a picture of systematic censorship orchestrated by Clinton's influence. "Let's talk about your time after the State Department." Kennedy said, his voice steady, but his eyes locked on Clinton like a prosecutor sizing up a witness. "You didn't just step away from public office. You kept a tight grip on the public narrative, didn't you? And you used some mighty powerful friends to do it." The monitors displayed a series of emails between Clinton's team and executives at major media and tech companies. "These here are communications from your office to some of the biggest names in media, CNN, MSNBC, and a few social media giants. They show you coordinating to shape stories, bury others, and silence voices that didn't fit your preferred narrative." The emails were damning, detailing requests to amplify certain stories and suppress others. One email highlighted on the monitors showed a Clinton aide asking a network to downplay a report about a controversial policy decision. "Now, I ain't no media expert," Kennedy continued, "but when a former Secretary of State starts telling news outlets what to cover, that's not influence, that's control." "Let's get specific," Kennedy said, pulling out a document with the precision of a surgeon. "This here is an email from your team to a major social media platform dated just before a big election cycle. It asks them to limit the reach of posts about a certain political issue." The monitors showed the email, its language clear and direct. "Please reduce visibility of content, questioning the integrity of the electoral process." The room gasped as the implications sank in. "Now, I'm just a simple man," Kennedy drawled. "But that sounds an awful lot like asking a private company to censor free speech because it didn't suit your politics." Clinton tried to respond, her voice calm but strained. "Senator, those communications were about combating misinformation, which is a threat to democracy." Kennedy's smile was almost pitying as he reached for another document. "Misinformation, you say? Let's check that homework." He held up a report from an independent watchdog group, its pages detailing the suppressed posts. "This report shows that the content you wanted limited wasn't misinformation. It was legitimate debate about policy posted by American citizens exercising their First Amendment rights." The monitors displayed examples, posts from grassroots activists, policy analysts, and everyday voters, all flagged for restriction at Clinton's behest. "But it gets worse," Kennedy said, his voice gaining weight as he produced a stack of subpoenaed communications. "You didn't just ask for censorship, you coordinated it like a general running a campaign." The monitors showed a timeline of requests from Clinton's team to tech platforms, each tied to specific content removals. "Over 2 years, we found 32 instances where your office contacted social media companies to suppress stories or accounts that didn't align with your narrative. 32 times, Mrs. Clinton. That's not protecting democracy, that's strangling it." The timeline was a gut punch showing a pattern of interference that left the room stunned. One of these requests, Kennedy continued, targeted a news outlet that published a story about your foundation's finances. Within hours of your team's email, that outlet's social media reach dropped by 70%. Coincidence? I don't think so. The monitors displayed analytics, the outlet's traffic plummeting after Clinton's intervention. The gallery murmured, reporters typed furiously, and social media exploded with reactions. Clinton tried to regain ground, her voice firm but defensive. "Senator, those actions were taken to protect the public from harmful falsehoods. My team worked with platforms to ensure accurate information." Kennedy's eyes gleamed as he pulled out a video clip. "Let's test that claim, shall we?" The monitors played a segment of Clinton on a major network, dismissing a news story as baseless while praising the platform that suppressed it. "Funny thing," Kennedy said, "that baseless story was backed by court documents, documents your team knew about when you called for it to be buried." He displayed the documents, their official seals unmistakable. "So when you say you were fighting falsehoods, were you protecting the public, or were you protecting yourself?" The question was a dagger, and the chamber felt its weight. Clinton's legal team scrambled, but her silence was deafening. Kennedy began pacing, his voice building with constitutional fervor. "The First Amendment. Mrs. Clinton says Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or the press. But you found a workaround, didn't you? You couldn't censor Americans directly, so you leaned on your friends in tech and media to do it for you." He produced internal memos from a tech company obtained through congressional subpoena. These memos show your team didn't just suggest censorship, they demanded it. You used your influence to silence voices that challenged your narrative, from independent journalists to ordinary citizens. The memos were explicit, detailing meetings where Clinton's aides pushed for content restrictions. "This ain't about misinformation," Kennedy said, his voice cutting like a blade. "This is about controlling what Americans can say and hear. That's not public service, that's tyranny." The room was silent as Kennedy held up his worn pocket Constitution, its pages marked with years of study. The founders wrote the First Amendment because they knew politicians would try to control the truth. They knew folks like you would want to decide what the people can know. He opened the document to the First Amendment, his voice ringing with authority. "When you pressure companies to censor speech, you're not just breaking an oath, you're attacking the very foundation of this country." He displayed a chart showing the decline in public trust in media during the years of Clinton's influence. "You didn't just silence voices, you eroded the trust Americans have in their free press. And for what? To protect your image. To win a news cycle." Clinton sat motionless, her face a mask, but her hands gripped the table, betraying her strain. "But we ain't finished," Kennedy said, reaching for another folder, this one thick with evidence of even greater betrayal. "Because suppressing free speech was just your warm-up. What you did with your power next makes this look like a misdemeanor. Smash that like button if you think Clinton's censorship needs to be called out. Comment First Amendment if you believe free speech is non-negotiable." The next chapter will show the ultimate betrayal of her oath. Kennedy's third strike had landed, and Clinton's legacy was teetering on the edge. Get ready, because Senator John Kennedy's constitutional reckoning with Hillary Clinton is about to reach its thunderous climax. After exposing her mishandling of classified information, her shady financial dealings, and her assault on free speech, the Louisiana lawyer, with the slow drawl and a mind like a steel trap, is ready to deliver the final blow, a lesson in accountability that'll echo through the halls of Washington. Smash that like button, because in the next 5 minutes, you'll see Kennedy sum up a career of betrayal and teach a lesson about what public service really means. This isn't just about one politician's downfall, it's about reminding America that no one is above the Constitution. Clinton thought she could outsmart a country lawyer, but Kennedy's briefcase of truth has left her legacy in ruins. Hit subscribe, because what's coming next will inspire you to demand justice from those who serve you. The Senate hearing room was a powder keg, still reeling from Kennedy's relentless evidence. Hillary Clinton sat silent, Her legal team out of moves, her once towering presence diminished under the weight of documented facts. The media, expecting her triumph, were now silent, as social media blazed with #Kennedy wins trending worldwide. They'd underestimated the man in the rumpled suit, and he was about to seal his victory. Senator John Kennedy stood tall, his old leather briefcase now a symbol of constitutional justice. His Louisiana drawl, calm but commanding, filled the chamber with the weight of truth. "Mrs. Clinton." He began, his voice carrying that folksy charm that had disarmed the room. "We've covered a lot of ground today. Your mishandling of classified secrets, your financial schemes, your attacks on free speech, it's a long list. But it all comes down to one simple truth." The room leaned in as Kennedy reached for his final folder, this one holding a single worn copy of the Constitution, its pages marked with his own notes. "See, I'm just a simple country lawyer," he drawled, "but my daddy taught me that public service means serving the people, not yourself. And you, Mrs. Clinton, forgot who you work for." The monitors flickered to life, displaying the oath of office Clinton took as Secretary of State. Let's remind ourselves of the words you swore to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Today we've seen how you broke that promise. Comment below if you feel the weight of that betrayal. The country lawyer's about to deliver a lesson America won't forget. Kennedy opened the Constitution, declaring it was not just paper, but the foundation of the nation. Power belongs to the people, not politicians. He accused Clinton of endangering lives with classified breaches, selling influence through donor money, and silencing free speech to control the narrative. Evidence flashed on the monitors: 22 security breaches, 14 pay-to-play deals, 32 censorship requests. "This isn't mistakes," he said. "It's a pattern of choosing personal gain over public duty." He reminded her that the founders built checks and balances to stop ambition over principle, and that censoring speech was an attack on the people's rights. Letters from constituents echoed betrayal. "We trusted you to serve us, not yourself." Kennedy's closing words cut deep. Public service is a privilege, not a right, and no one is above the law. The chamber erupted in applause while Clinton left in silence, her legacy shaken.